I say I was once lost, but now I found light of the early Selassie. Selassie, I live it every time. Emmanuel, live it every time. Marcus, Garvey, live it every time.
Look for me in a world when I'm a storm. Look for me all around you. For a God's grace, I just come back with countless millions of black men and women who have died in America, those who have died in the West Indies, and those who have died in Africa to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life.
The decades of the early 1900s marked a turning point in the identity of black people across the world, and one man, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, was at the fulcrum. Born in St. Anne, Jamaica on August 17, 1887, Garvey cemented his place in history in an era that was ripe with problems for Africans brought to the West as slaves. From Jamaica to Africa, Washington to Birmingham, Garvey's messages were clear, offering hope to the disillusioned, disenfranchised, and dislocated peoples of the black race. Today, it may be argued that of all the people whose lives Garvey has touched, it's with the Rastafarians that he's resonated the most. But what really does Marcus Garvey mean to the movement called Rastafari?
Marcus Garvey is a prophet, man. Marcus Garvey tell that we must look to the east for the king. A lot of things Marcus Garvey say, and a lot of it come to pass. Some still live, and everyone see it. I mean, get more stronger, you know.
So are you a Rasta?
I am a Rastafarian, yes. Do not look at my bald head. Look at my heart and my work. To me as a Rastaman and a Garveyite, Marcus Garvey is the original essence. He was the John the Baptist to the Rastafari movement.
Garvey is a central pillar within Rastafari philosophy and ethic. Those who say I Selassie is a central pillar. One focus on the diaspora, which is Garvey. One focus on the diaspora, which is Marcus Garvey. One focus on the continent. What Rastafari has done is to bring together those two philosophy and ethic into one liberty.
Garvey to me as a Rastafarian means upliftment of my race, upliftment of the Rastafari movement.
All my days. Seems like they have been wasted, eh? Bueno. Just goes on to show. Till I'm laid to rest, yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best, yes. Propaganda that spread, tongues will have confess. What could a man say about the East? Everybody want a piece. Africa free Africans, Marcus Mosiah speak. Unification out on the feet. What a day when we walking down Redemption Street. Ban up our head, Bible in a hand, one and all. Make we try the promised land. But you go down the Congo, stop in a Shashamane land. The city of Ferraris where Selassie come from. In Addis Ababa, then Botswana. Left Kenya, I end up in a Ghana. Oh, what a beauty, my eyesight behold. Holy Ethiopia, protect me from the cold. Till I'm laid to rest, yes, always be depressed.
The Rastafarian movement emerged in Jamaica in the 1930s out of a posture of resistance to colonialism. It coincided with the period of turmoil for the Negro race across the globe, particularly those in the Western Hemisphere and Africa, where subjugation and discrimination were being meted out by the white imperialists in Europe. Blacks over time saw the need to uplift themselves from this state and seek legitimacy as equal citizens. They would engage in political, social, cultural, and religious forms of expressing themselves, and Marcus Garvey was their inspiration.
Garvey's whole ideal. Garvey had said, and he's noted as saying that while every people on the planet will worship God through their own spectacles, so let us as black people worship God through the spectacles of Ethiopia. Okay, and in saying this, Rastafari have taken it a step further, because as you know, Rastafari see God in the personality of Haile Selassie I, who's Emperor of Ethiopia. So Rastafari have taken on that Ethiopianist ideal to probably the highest level that you can take it to. So that's a very important link that cannot be overemphasized. Is the Ethiopianism of Garvey has been taken to another level by the Rastafari movement. Because Garvey was clear, if nothing else. I mean, he was Christian-based, Christian-minded, but his thing was we see God as black, unapologetically. And if it's one thing that Jamaica must get from Rastafari is look at God through your own spectacles. Why are you having this white Jesus on your wall? Yeah? I mean, some of my relatives have a white Jesus on the living room wall. I have to ask them, does this look, you know, is this how you see God? Do you really see him as somebody who's white? You know? A lot of people say, well, why God don't really have no color, you know, Jesus have no color. Well, if you don't have no color, why have a white picture of Jesus? And then if I try and replace that white picture of Jesus with a black picture of Jesus, you have a problem.
He was the one who pointed, look to Africa when His Majesty was about to be crowned. He said, look to Africa where a king shall be crowned, and in him shall be your redemption.
Garvey's influence on Rastafarians went far beyond his much-embraced utterance that a king would emerge from Africa. His core ideologies also helped in laying the groundwork for the movement called Rastafari. And Rasta would look to Garvey's institution of legacy, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, a worldwide organization of 6 million people embracing black pride, black identity, and black empowerment.
Was the fundamental principles of Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey's idea was to establish an international organization that sought to liberate black people. Yes? In a time you have real racial injustice taking place. Because it was about 1914, he started the UNIA in Jamaica, you know. In 1914, the next significant thing occurred. I'm going to link it back to Rastafari. You know. What in 1914? The opening of the Panama Canal. His opening of the Panama Canal actually took place in 1914. You know. So you can imagine Marcus knowing that these things were actually taking place. That it makes sense to him because World War I did almost end and they have ship selling and things still. It makes sense to engage in trade. But what was his main focus? His business model was on. His business model was actually creating niche goods and services for black people. Because in 1900s, they didn't anything about black people. Totally disregard them. So, the products were for black people specifically, but they never discriminated them. So if white people wanted these services as well, they would have gotten it. Yes? So, he produced black dolls, he produced so many different kind of black products and things, linking into this kind of niche market. So there's a sense of blackness he must promote. Well, Rastafari really is. Rastafari is a liberty which says that one must know self. And know self to the highest point, which is spirituality. No, that's a religion, but spirituality, which is the difference between Marcus and Rastafari. Because Marcus was religious, Rastafari was not religious. Rastafari is more spiritual, so they don't need religion and things. So it's more in spirituality and so. As Marcus had argued that they must look to the east for the coming of a black king, Rastafari also looked to the coming of that black king as guided by Marcus Garvey at the time. But the philosophy of Marcus Garvey and the philosophy of Rastafari is one and the same. Because it's about a liberty that liberates one people, socially, politically, economically, and of course culturally and psychologically. If you link Selassie into the picture now, while Marcus Garvey focused on the diaspora, the African diaspora, Selassie was focusing on the continent itself. And therefore you find that bringing together both philosophy and practices creates a holistic approach towards dealing with black people matter, whether they're in the diaspora or in the continent. So it's a natural kind of synergy. Hence we raise the first point that this approach where people talk about the difference between Marcus Garvey and Haile Selassie is something which I think is devious. Because that's the only point where I see there's any kind of difference or confrontation. And that is the point that a number of people try to highlight at all times.
As a teacher of Garveyism, what I try to do is to teach my students the foundation philosophy behind Marcus Garvey, what motivated him to do what he did, what what led him to urge us towards Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. What cried out in him, one God, one aim, one destiny. Because if we can understand that, particularly the concept of African fundamentalism and African redemption, then it will put us on a better path to achieving what he set out to do. You see, our minds have been clouded by selfish materialism. We've become a consumer race that thinks only about self rather than trying to repair the breach that was made when our ancestors were brought over here. They stayed alive with the hope of returning home. We desecrate their memory when we forget that our place is to restore Africa and redeem our race.
Marcus Garvey had created that business model for transformation of societies. Rastafari has practiced this business model which speaks to the transformation of societies. Because if you check it, in the 80s, the Bobo Ashanti them, they make them room. So if you listen to the music, you know, you hear the music I sing about the Rastaman, I say no nothing. You know, the music in the 1980s, but you see the Bobo up in the room and go through and walk from room and go straight to jungle and rave, whatever, you know. However, them still maintain them need to have them economics and them independence. The deviation, as I said, Marcus would have used indigenous things. This is what about brand Jamaica. If you call a brand African product, Marcus Garvey would have had that kind of brand for authentic African-made products. See? The Bobo Ashanti in the 80s developed those kind of things, but now I'm still doing business, but I see myself the man come from China, I see myself plastic this and plastic that, which is unfortunate. But still see there's a remnants of the fact that you need for have your own enterprise. But a lot of things in terms of enterprise come from Rastafari. The whole platform for the creative industry is really built upon the platform of Rastafari and black nationalism and things. You see? See how the music, which is probably the biggest era. Remember, the creative industry is valued at $1 trillion US.
The Rastaman a go to, yo we mafia hustle but on him a juggle him room. Boom, the Rastaman a go to. Black people carry it up, that's why the whole of them a blossom and bloom. Boom, the Rastaman a go to, hustle him but on him a juggle him roots. And the truth, boom, the Rastaman a go to. Them a laugh, see the bungalow roof on me head top. I saw me hustle, so we put on we pop. We not go kill, we not go rape, we not go bust no gunshot. Bobo Shanti, stand up for the poor and have that. Them get it pile up because my burn up them cast them want to move for them room and them door want to matter.
So Rastafarians have embraced Garvey's ideas of self-reliance by pursuing their own businesses to secure their incomes. And Dr. Michael Barnett says Rastafarians have also embraced other ideas preached by Marcus Garvey, among them black pride.
Because black people in general still are not comfortable with their African heritage and their African past. Many black people don't feel connected with Africa. And this is one of the things that Garvey emphasized. Ironically, although he is our first national hero, we don't really internalize many of his ideals. One was black pride, right? Many of us are still bleaching our skins, where we denigrate our skin, even our hair. Many of us are uncomfortable with natural hair, and that's something that Rastafari has in its own way helped to counteract. Is this this denigration of natural hair? Because Rastafari celebrate natural hair. You know, the locks. This is a celebration. You know, it's African hair that is easiest to lock, right? So it's a celebration of that, moving away from that fine straight hair that a lot of people celebrate. So more and more we see sister locks have come in. You know, you could argue even now brother locks coming in, you know, and all kind of locks, which was not popular if you go back just maybe 15, 20 years ago. So Rasta has popularized locks all over the world. You know, the US, you see, you get popular, you know, Canada.
The need for upliftment is an international thing because the oppressor is an international oppressor. Europeans have been international in their way of destroying our culture, destroying our people, suppressing our people. They even taught us to hate ourselves. Look at us today, bleaching our skin. After all these great leaders have come, after Marcus Garvey, in fact, was the foundation for all the leaders. from Garvey's point of view, is the redemption of African people, the upliftment of our people. The very same thing with his Imperial Majesty. Marcus Garvey's work is about the upliftment of our race, self-empowerment, not relying on any other race or any species, because we have all the resources, you know. We are, in case you didn't understand, we have the gold, the diamond, the uranium, the land, the people. We have all of these things. We are the original people of the earth. We created civilization. We gave the foundation for the advancement of Caucasians to the level that they are today. Caucasians knew nothing about civilization until they came to Africa and saw our great kings and princesses and palaces and temples and places of learning. They knew nothing. Civilization could not be advanced as it is today without mathematics, astronomy, astrology, geometry, and as you can see, the pyramid is nothing but a geometrical feature.
The second Garvey lesson states, beauty must be reflected out of your own eyes. A Negro must be beautiful to a Negro, as an Anglo-Saxon is to an Anglo-Saxon. The highest standard of beauty, therefore, for a Negro is a Negro. Never allow any race to say that your race is not beautiful. If there is ugliness in a race, it is in the other race, not in yours, because the other race looks different to you. So says Marcus Messiah Garvey.
Today, the late Marcus Messiah Garvey stands as a symbol of resistance to anti-colonial white domination, and his insistence on the ideas of racial pride, dignity, and self-reliance has formed the basis for some of Rasta's most potent cultural forms, like music and language. The music has spanned many different eras, dating back to the heydays of Burning Spear through to the legendary Bob Marley, and now through artists like Tarrus Riley.
Give us the teaching of Marcus Garvey, Kebra Negasmis, glory of kings.
We didn't have a public holiday for Marcus Garvey in this time. From that time,
Marcus Garvey, prophesy, say, oh yeah, man, I go fighting back against the wall. When the right time comes,
7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. 7 miles of Black Star liners coming in the harbor. I can see them coming. I can see hydrants running. I can hear the elders saying, these are the days for which we've been praying.
Who sing more about Marcus Garvey than Rastafari people? Remember, there's no one in the world who sing about Marcus Garvey like Rastafari people and Jamaican people in particular. All people want to Rasta sing about Marcus Garvey. Burning Spear must do about 50 songs about Marcus Garvey alone. Who you know have done that kind of work? Yes. The thing when they rank second with that is food and clothes. You know what I mean? So Friday people was talk about dressing black. Although that is something which is hard to define because no for we as Rastafari think about functionality. You know, some of the African people, I can't wear going there, but I wouldn't feel comfortable dressing like that all the while because I know my movements say. See? But food, yeah, we are saying must use natural food, organic food, ital food. That means that Marcus was ital enough and organic enough. But Marcus just say self-reliance. And we know if you're in a country import $1 billion of food to Jamaica, what kind of situation that you're in? And none of the food won't take a long time for grow. You know what I mean? So we are saying, use your local food, use your ground food, and also find that that is linked into the wellness itself. Marcus, let's extend the wellness, because I know so Marcus actually died, according to them, from a lifestyle illness and thing, which is really eating. You know? But that thing of Africanness, African-centeredness, in music, food, dress, etc., yeah, I think it's very strong with Rastafari and Marcus. And that will not change. That will not change. Now why not going to change? Because a lot of the things that Rastafari taught from them long time, them Rastafari is mad people. The world actually adopting them. Is wellness is a big thing now, you know. Everything is being done in this framework of what is called sustainable development. Yes? And what is that about? How do you, as a current generation, satisfy your need without jeopardizing other generations' ability to satisfy their need as well? I know that about your ancestor. I was that about generations come out of the long term and the long view. See? So we know that food security is a critical element within Garvey and Garvey's philosophy. And yet about South-South trade. So you have accessibility to food and resources as well, which is critical. And today, Rastafari still accept those principles as being very important. You know? Rastafari say you can't give up a continent for an island. You know? Farah say stop importing these things, stop eating things that you don't want to know about. No, Marcus never ever said stop importing. But from what I say, you must be self-reliant in critical things that drive a society. Food will be a central element.
There is a range of dietary possibilities and choices that Rasta make, depending on which mansion you belong to. So the truth is not all Rasta are vegetarian, right? Some Rasta actually do eat meat, particularly 12 tribe, but pork is what is taboo. Because pork is seen as unclean, just as Muslims don't eat pork, you know, and Jews don't eat pork. So why we are celebrate pork so much in Jamaica? So the argument is that if even from a point of spirituality, certain foods are taboo, you know, one of them being pork, you know. We have biblical prescriptions that some Rasta use to justify them diet, specifically Leviticus, and some for health reasons, that a diet that is vegetarian orientated is easier on your digestive system, and it's more conducive to, you know, active, untoxified, you know, system, you know. So the whole thing is cleaner living, healthier lifestyle. We call it ital liberty, you know, a wholesome lifestyle. So that's the food. Now with the language, now you have more elements of resistance in the language, because the Rastafari are very critical of some of the words we use. So in other words, instead of saying I appreciate, right? Now arguably hate is in that. So it's I appreciate love if you do something for me, you know, rather than say oppress, you know, we say down press, you know, because you're not, you know, when you oppress someone you're pushing him down, and rather than saying you know, manager in the music business, you know, Tosh would say damager. Yeah, but think of Rasta talk where, I mean, it's not a direct link with Garvey, but you brought up the language, you brought up the issue of Rasta talk. You know, we're very creative as African people. I mean, Garvey, Sing of Resistance, was a Pan-Africanist stance against colonialism and oppression, because in the time of Garvey, in the early 20th century, literally every black nation on the planet was a colony of Europe. Every black nation except for Haiti in the West. They managed to win their independence, 1804, yeah, through their own agitation and their own struggles. They won, were victorious in the Haitian rebellion. Revolution, but I've paid the price ever since. And Ethiopia.
Garvey's UNIA bore the colors black, red, and green. The black representing the color of the skin of black Africans. The red, the blood that united all people of African ancestry, and the green representing the abundant nature of wealth in Africa. The representation and meaning of the Rastafarian flag is similar. The colors red, green, and gold. The red representing the blood of the blacks who struggled to fight off their white oppressors. The gold, the rich minerals coming out of the land of Africa. And green, the rich vegetation of the land. Arguably, a true indication that in the heart of Rasta, Garvey liveth. But 83 years since its emergence, has the resolve of Rasta waned? And is Rasta's embrace of Garvey's ideologies still relevant?
Garvey meant more to Africa and Africans around the world than perhaps Bob Marley, who is a more interracially accepted figure. Garvey asked for the creation of an African empire. And so, is he relevant? Where's the African empire? Garvey will always be relevant until we have achieved that empire. Yes, we have independent African countries, we have independent West Indian countries, but we have no collective security. We have no empire, we have no seat at the table with those who dictate policy in the world. And this is where Garvey sought to place the black man. So until we have taken that rightful place, Garvey will remain relevant.
What has changed in terms of black people reality? 2 billion people in the world on less than $5 a day. And the majority of those people are African people. 1 million people in Jamaica live on less than $5 a day. And 90% of the Jamaican population is African people. Nothing has changed much, man. And so as long as there be oppressed people, you have a need for Garvey and Rastafari. But more importantly, as long as there's a need for a vision to move forward, which is probably the most important thing, you will always have a need for Rastafari and Marcus Garvey. Because the only indigenous vision and grounded vision for African people moved forward is that as expressed by Marcus Garvey and that as practiced by Rastafari.
For in the end, a people without knowledge of its past is like a tree without roots.
Yeah. Give us the teaching of Marcus Garvey. Kebranekas means glory of kings. Give I and I Selassie and keep the images of lies for yourself. People without a vision perish like suicide. You tell me it's not about color, still you refuse to take the picture off the wall.